Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Insight Live Week session, Smart Cities, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. My name's Louise Stokes. It's my pleasure to be chairing today's session. And I'll just recap the key session takeaways before I hand over to our presenters, Sam and Vinny, to take us through the session. So they will be covering today cultural transformation versus digital transformation. Also, industry and real-world insights into what makes great smart city projects, bad projects, and very ugly projects. Also, the success trifecta, the supplier, the city, and the user, how to maximize cultural identity to increase project success. And finally, what to look for in a supplier and what to look out for in a supplier. So to introduce our presenters, first of all, we're joined by Sam Johnston, and he is an entrepreneurial and data-driven CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, with both hyper-growth startup and enterprise experience building, operating and growing SaaS, leisure and education, tourism and consumer brands at scale. He is also an advisor and board member across numerous challenger brands within technology, consumer, retail, e-commerce, leisure, tourism, and education, with a track record of leadership, expansion, and providing growth. Sam works with over 120 local government organisations as well as 500 plus SMEs, improving their digital and user experience landscapes. Having worked with such a wide variety of organisation types and sizes, Sam is able to bring a unique perspective on smart cities. And we're also joined by Vinny Morgan. Vinny is a prolific technology entrepreneur that has supported the public sector with its digital transformation goals over 10 years. Having founded and ingrained BookingLive with the vision for innovation, industry-leading customer service, and best in market solutions, Vinny has a wealth of qualification and experience in implementing smart city and digital transformation projects here in the UK and internationally. Before I hand over to them, if you would want to ask a question, and we really encourage you to do so, please use the chat box provided in this Zoom call. Send your question through to me, Louise Stokes, or the Digital Leaders account, and I can ask that question on your behalf in the sort of last 15 minutes of today's session. To our presenters, Sam and Vinny. So without further delay, over to you both, Sam and Vinny.
Thanks, Louise, and welcome to the BookingLive's Smart City webinar, where we're really happy to be able to share some of our insights into this topic. As Louise has already said, we've got around just over 10 years experience as a business implementing digital transformation and smart solutions in about 45 different countries. So we're really in a great position to add some learning and hopefully some value, and hopefully give you guys some notes and some ideas to take away and to support you in your projects and organizations. And as Louise said, any questions, please do make a note, send them over to Louise, and there'll be a time at the end where we can go through that with you guys. This slide just covers through some of the content that we'll be going through today. We'll start off looking at the difference between cultural transformation and digital transformation. We'll then move over to some industry and real world insights into what makes a great smart city. Projects, bad projects, great projects, and some of the ugly ones as well. We'll then move on to the success trifecta, discussing the difference between the supplier, the city, and the user, and how you can maximize cultural identity within your organization to increase project success in whichever one of those different areas that you belong to. Then we'll be looking at what to look for in a supplier and what to look out for in a supplier as well. So first off, let's look at what is cultural and digital transformation. Now, for us, digital transformation marks a radical rethinking of how an organization uses technology, people, and processes to fundamentally change business performance. Digital transformation doesn't come in a box or a cloud. People and processes have equally important parts to play in the undertaking. The top things that need to be done are really having a vision for what is possible, aligning your culture to be able to move quickly and take advantage of those opportunities, and provide adequate training to allow your people within your organization to be able to implement solutions while also always being on the lookout and identifying additional opportunities. With the experience that we have globally, and we try to bring in a number of different perspectives here from the US, the UK, and across Asia as well. But for instance, Jason James here, the CIO at Optima Healthcare Solutions, states, successful digital transformation begins as a cultural transformation. One of the key things that James talks about is top-down management culture really needs to change, reducing risk, reducing cost, and realistically now moving more quickly than ever, empowering people within your organizations, ensuring that your processes, your departments and structures are inclusive, and being open to new ideas and new perspectives being brought in, and really changing that top-down management structure there. And I say this because the top things that need to be done are really having a vision for what is possible, aligning your culture to be able to move quickly, take advantage of all of the opportunities that come and are available to you, and providing adequate training to your team in this new way of thinking to allow your people to implement solutions while looking for those additional opportunities. These are all hard things to do, because for years the core competencies really for IT have been reducing risk and reducing cost, much of which has come from that traditional top-down style of management, and it simply just isn't conducive to moving quickly or empowering people to be able to make decisions, be innovative, bring new ideas, or being inclusive of the wider team that you have within your departments. The CEO at Berkeley, Veritronix Systems, for instance, Scott Schober, talks about jumping in whilst aiming at a moving target. It's a really small statement there, but it really does hit it on the head. Companies, they cannot wait for the high-tech merry-go-round to stop or even really slow down. So IT leaders must jump in while aiming to hit that moving target in order to achieve higher revenue growth by increasing business efficiencies. Now, it's an ongoing process. You won't arrive at digital transformation land and have completed it. It's a change management challenge with continually moving finish lines. Even the word we often use, digital transformation, the word transformation itself coming from the Latin word transformare, meaning to go across or to go beyond, but not necessarily to have arrived. And the next slide here talks about starting with business goals instead of technology stacks. It's setting non-stationary objectives that acknowledge the continuous task at hand. In order to implement the culture and understanding, you really have to put these things into practice on a daily basis. And here's just 4 ways, basically, of being able to get started on some of these. The first one here is baking cybersecurity into your company's DNA. Savvy IT leaders no longer see security, for instance, just as a cost item. They bake it deeply into their value chains, use it as a differentiator against all of their less secure rivals out there. The next one is put more emphasis on business outcomes. And we've already discussed this slightly, but rather than focusing on gaining efficiencies and contributing savings to the bottom line, the focus lies more on building, enabling, and implementing new digital use cases that lead to top-line revenue growth. The next one is embracing new leadership styles. We've already touched on this, but the new reality is that hierarchical thinking no longer works in today's disruptive world. Successful IT leaders create work cultures where employees feel encouraged to try to solve small problems with iterative experiments, for instance. And employees' willingness to experiment and improve is really a part of the broader phenomenon of humble leadership, which is needed to provide continually developing and innovative smart cities to keep up and to continually move forward. The last one here is utilizing change management. Maintaining agility is really key when it comes to keeping up with the rate of adoption and meeting increasing customer demands that the cities will be experiencing. And smart IT leaders therefore implement and champion agile methodologies such as DevOps, continuous integration or continuous delivery, and simplified governance. And as we've already discussed today, this all sounds very simple on paper, but when being implemented by a team that's used to having hard targets and stagnant environments, the role of the leadership here really is to foster confidence and be that example in the change that really needs to occur. So we're now going to talk through some great smart city projects, some bad projects, and a couple of rather ugly ones as well. And with over 10 years of experience here, BookingLive's gathered a vast amount of experience and learning surrounding cities, local governments, running some of those good and bad and some far worse digital transformation projects. And with this in mind, we wanted to dive into 3 examples for you to provide some value. And I'll hand you over to Vinny here, who's got a wealth of experience in these specific areas.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. Pleasure for all of you to attend today. So great smart city projects. The digital age, it may feel like a relatively new era for most people, but in fact the digital or information age started in the late 1970s and has helped change how we live, how we work and how we play. Since then, many smart projects fueled by the government's digital agenda have appeared in cities across the world. And there's no better examples of such projects than the ones we see around us today. Bill Gates is a clear advocate. He's spending money on several projects, including waste management, and most recently is spending a whopping $80 million on acres in Arizona to connect it to Vegas. Within this infrastructure and his core vision for the zone, there's going to be self-drive cars, renewable energy, smart living, surveillance, facial recognition, and the list goes on. This cultural transformation is now deep in many digital transformation projects across the world. $500 million is being invested by Saudi Arabia into NEOM. And for example, with them, they won't have the strict Islamic laws, and they will generate 100% of their energy from renewable sources. Bad city projects. In 2009, within the UK, Swindon Council aimed to deliver digital within its local community by offering free Wi-Fi to every citizen. Evidence from the US demonstrated this model would work, so Wi-Fis were mounted and the pilot program was a success. However, amongst a catalogue of errors, not enough due diligence was done during procurement. The supplier, Digital City UK, went into liquidation. This project was highly damaging for the city, putting off many other inbound investment opportunities. And now, more than 10 years later, and under a new supplier, there have been fresh calls for the project to be scrapped entirely, especially given that there's new ISPs within the UK who have completed several network upgrades. Being diligent and being decisive is key to success. And lastly, very ugly smart city projects. Smart digital technology gives people the power to improve their lives. You'll arrive to work on time and your smartphone will become your smart drone. But it won't be anything like the science fiction films, and we won't get there without our struggles. Cybersecurity is often vulnerable and underfunded, and the emergence of smart city projects often exposes and increases the gap between the poor and the wealthy. The main problem being is that many of these projects are delivered by the private sector, meaning quite simply they are profit-driven. And the more smart city projects funded for the masses rather than a few will benefit both mankind and the planet we live on. I, for one, am completely optimistic. Back to you, Sam.
Thanks, Vinny. And I wanted to move on to 6 really key tangible ways that you can implement these sort of items into your daily practice. Kjeld Lindsted is an award-winning smart city program manager down at Redlands in California, and we'll go through some of the 6 actionable things that they state suppliers and cities could put in place today to make a real difference. Starting at number 1, accept the cities are risk averse. 2 of the worst things that can happen for any city official is, number 1, make a bad decision and have the consequences splashed all over the local press and news, or number 2, unintentionally break a law and suffer major consequences. So avoiding these 2 worst things becomes a major incentive for anyone who works for a local government. Every step of the way, culture, systems, and processes tell city employees, slow down, don't screw up. And given that there's often a tremendous amount of money and sometimes lives on the line, it's perfectly logical, and we should expect that this is going to be the case. Acknowledging the reasons for local government risk aversion can really go a long way when trying to pursue something new in a local government, like smart city initiatives. So if you are a supplier or a buyer, something really to take home there. The next one is, some silos exist for a good reason. There's a maxim in innovation that silos are generally bad and cool things can't really be achieved without abolishing them, but we're always talking about breaking down silos, cutting across silos, opening up silos, sharing data between silos, etc. I'm sure if you're working in local government, you'll have heard those terms thrown around a lot. But often silos exist for a pretty good reason. One consequence of city risk aversion is that analysis paralysis can be a huge problem. Everything has to be studied 10 different ways. More people always need to weigh in, and even then, no one really wants to make the actual call. Silos can help sometimes, especially if you're coming at this from a supplier perspective, by assigning a topic to only one department, or if a city chooses a specific division, city leaders can more effectively build employee ownership over that specific topic. When someone owns a project, not only are they more likely to build the necessary expertise, but they're also more motivated to make tough choices because they know that they'll own the failure of actually doing nothing. So the next one here is focus on problems and outcomes, not solutions and tech. Too often, people focus on the new shiny thing in smart cities rather than the actual problem that the new shiny thing is trying to help the city to solve. the projects can get built, the tech gets adopted, and all address pain points for citizens or pain points for government employees. What are the biggest problems in citizens' daily lives is the question. How can we improve the daily effectiveness and efficiency of our city employees? The solutions at scale are the ones with awesome measurable outcomes, basically. Things like taxpayer pounds saved or dollars saved, hours of staff time that can be reallocated to other projects, numbers of road closures avoided, percentage decrease in traffic accidents, amount of time even reduced for the average commute, etc. And if your area or you are an area supplier, make this your priority when pitching or bidding. And if you are a buyer, ensure that success metrics reflect these sort of things, and you really will get that head start. The next one is for vendors, really. Engage at the right level, which is probably not the city council. Please stop calling the city council with your sales pitches. We've talked to a lot of city council members, a lot of public sector organizations, and I know it's tempting, but it seems like they're the final decision maker anyway. But it's not that simple. In our experience, council members will listen politely, but then turn around and kick the idea down to a director, who'll kick it down to a manager, who will then assign the actual investigation and the call that you're going to have to some staffer who already has a million things to do and really has little context for any of it. Now, instead of this being an investigation undertaken to solve concrete problems and really have buy-in, the staff who calls you back is probably just trying to check a box and make sure he's done that call, and you've likely already lost the interest. Instead, do your homework, figure out what problem your tech solves and who owns that problem within that organization. Engage with this person because they actually may care and actually may want to progress things forward. Next one is concrete. So concentrate on the foundations first. Whether you're a city official tasked with building a smart city or you're an entrepreneur who's developing the tech that makes a smart city possible, it's easy to get caught up in the magic of extreme possibilities and forget all about the critical stuff that actually every government is built on. And this is true of internal government processes, things like timesheets, email storage, shared file management, work order processing, land use tracking, rental inspections, and employee training tools all represent huge opportunities for improvement and must be in place before really doing anything fancier. But it's also true of our built infrastructure, things like broadband access, more flexible, resilient energy grid, and equitable transportation infrastructure. They're all prerequisites for pursuing more sexier, smart city efforts as well. Perhaps the best example is cybersecurity, which is grossly overlooked all across the smart city industry. It's rarely sufficient to simply bolt new ideas onto the super broken substructures of existing organizations. Whatever the case, make sure you've included at least some of the basics in your smart city strategy, or you run the risk of pretty much burning out before you've even really got started. And the last one here is prioritizing problem solving over problem reporting. It's a really key aspect that it's a simple one, but ensure that you are prioritizing the solving of the problem rather than spending the next 2 years simply reporting back on it. Moving on. The success trifecta is a simple term that explains that there's 3 different key stakeholders here that should be going into any successful planning or delivery of a smart city project. It's important that consideration and inclusion is given to these stakeholders whilst creating the vision, the missions, the goals, targets, any plans. This goes for suppliers looking to bid or pitch their offering as well. Ensure that you have taken these stakeholders into full consideration, and more importantly, ensure that you can demonstrate so when you're presenting, when you're bidding, or when you're pitching for a specific solution. Nick Kittle is the CIO for Adams County and Colorado, again, an award-winning person within Smart City Initiatives. And he talks about transparency and clarity. When communicating, local governments tend to have issues related to transparency and clarity. And specifically, that again relates to the citizens, the suppliers, and finally, internally, the cities themselves. For citizens in particular, they really need to know what is going on. It needs to be transparent, it needs to be clear, and they need to understand what outcomes will come from this and what benefits. And they're more likely to support you and give you the space and time to complete that initiative if they're bought into it. Same with suppliers. They need to understand what the real strategic needs of the project is going to be, how this project links to wider initiatives, and what those key outcomes need to be so that they can more efficiently bid and complete a successful project with you. And finally, internally between departments and management layers within local government and within cities, the vision and strategic outcomes have to be clear, have to be transparent, have to be a part of every single day's discussions. Creating a trifecta culture. So the healthier a local government workplace is, the better the organization can serve the organization. Sounds simple, but it's something that we all need to take into consideration. Now, there's 5 ways here that you can include this success trifecta into your decision making. These are some practical ways that you can go about it. Number 1 is doing local public surveys, getting the buy-in, getting the understanding, and then mapping your strategies around the needs of your local populace is incredibly important. The next one is local employee surveys. So the actual employees that are going to be implementing it, that are going to be the ones doing the groundwork, get their buy-in, understand what their needs, their fears are, so that you can again implement that into your strategy. Soft market testing processes, getting out there, engaging with suppliers and the marketplace to make sure that you are getting the best solution and that they can help you to go through this process and offer all the insight from all the other smart cities that they've worked with into your specific project. Then key partners and frameworks, plenty of them out there, a really great way for you to reach out and have that route to market to engage with those suppliers. And again, the last part here, I can't iterate it enough, outcomes versus process focus. Ensure that everything that you do has that trifecta of 3 different key stakeholders, what their needs, wants, and aims are, and put that into the outcome process. The next one here is what to look for in a supplier and what to look out for in a supplier. This goes for local government and smart cities, but also for suppliers. Get some instant tips. We've obviously spoken to hundreds and hundreds. Local government had some fantastic projects go through. These are some of the things that they keep on mentioning to us and that are going to need to be addressed. Let's go through the 10 purchasing best practices for the public sector. Some things here that the private sector can support with as well, but we'll start off at number 1 here, which is one bidder doesn't necessarily make them the lowest qualified. It usually means that there was something wrong with the request for proposal done internally. And really, if you have only one person coming back, tear it up and start again. The next one is consider being more product vague in your bid or search. In other words, don't over-specify what you want to buy. Instead, explain the problem you're trying to solve. Let the experts present that solution or alternatives back to you. With technology changing so fast, there will probably be a kind of next best thing out there that you haven't actually considered yourself. The next one is consider trying commodity prices when doing long-term contracts. If your purchase involves a supply of resource, this creates partnerships where swings in the price of fuel or other energy-related costs or resources can be adjusted at specific intervals within that contract. Then building specific strategic openers into long-term contracts will only be of benefit. And the next one is ask for cost breakdowns. Then use that data and breakdown to set the targets. It's not uncommon to see aggregate prices for road projects, for instance, or development resource pricing being quite different across multiple bids when the price of the aggregate or development, for example, is not actually that elastic. The next one is ask for other suggestions. A great standard line for an RFP could be, in the case of a similar or tie bid, what differentiator could you add that would make your submission more attractive for our community to actually consider? Something like that generates other suggestions and opens you up to more innovation. Then consider a best or final offer strategy. There's an old adage in the world of sales and procurement: if you don't ask, you probably aren't going to get it. So be bold. You are the customer and you're in the driver's seat, and the bidders want your business. So use that to your advantage. And that leads on nicely to sending anybody involved with procurement to negotiation or other style of training classes that are relevant. Because especially during the second and further stages where in-house pitches and presentations are made, this is the time for well-trained negotiation, and you need people on your side that are trained and can go through that process effectively. Then consider make versus buy comparisons. Incredibly important, this one. You don't have to own everything. Consider make versus buy comparisons whenever you can. If you can find a product or service on the open market which will allow you to deliver the service without jeopardizing quality, use this as a productivity gain to help offset problems that you may face in the future, like staff attrition and so on and so forth. And then use a weighted decision analysis tool like a bug tool. Always build detailed bid comparisons so you can easily see key elements of any bid and consider using something like a weighted decision analysis tool to qualify that value proposition. It'll really help you when you're making the right decision and trying to move things forward. And that concludes our presentation for today. And again, we fully appreciate this is a lot of information for a short webinar. However, as an organization, we're ingrained in a day-to-day in digital transformation projects around the world, and we continually acquire industry-leading insights from organizations like you guys that are working with And if you'd like to hear more about how BookingLive can support you in your smart city, digital transformation efforts, so on and so forth, and the contact details are here on the page, on the screen that you're looking at the moment. And don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help you every step of the way. And I'm going to hand you over to Louise now, who can run through any questions that we have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you, Vinny, as well, for such an insightful presentation. There's a couple of questions that have been sent through, but for the attendees out there, if you do have a question, send it through now. The comments section is also now available on the Insight Live page, which is where the recording will be housed as well. So we are fully recording today's session with the slides and audio, and it will also include closed captioning. There was a question that came through about that, so that will be included in the recording. So a question to start with, what do you think the next innovations will be within the solutions that you offer cities? What's next?
Hi, Vinny here. So yeah, I kind of mentioned in one of the examples, probably smart drones over smartphones, and there's many examples of how, as an industry, we're getting there. Home deliveries by drone, for example. So it won't be too long before those tech devices that we're used to on a daily basis will soon be evolving into something else.
Yeah, and Google has actually just been given the first license to start doing that. They beat Amazon to the post on the east coast of the US. So they are experimenting with it, and that's probably something we're going to see on the horizon very soon.
Awesome. Another question that's come through here is, how do you ensure that your team internally are always innovating to stay ahead of the market in providing the best onboarding experiences possible?
Yeah, Vinny again. I think if I understand your question correctly, certainly what's been successful for us is a culture. And I don't mean pizzas and beers on a Friday in a dog-friendly office. It's all about emerging and engaging rather the staff together, sharing that vision, being clear and very direct on what the goals are that you want to achieve for the company, and allowing your staff to empower them obviously gets you much better results. That's a real success story from BookingLive.
Awesome. Can UK cities use case studies and learning from cities outside of the UK, or how much is relevant? What's been your experience?
Yeah, I can answer that again. There's success stories all over the world, but predominantly they have been privately funded. So I think if governments can continue with this shift on the digital agendas that they're introducing, then yeah, there's going to be many examples. And you don't necessarily need time either. You know, I gave a kind of bad example of 10 years later, Swindon Council still trying to implement that project. And there's so many examples. If you look at mobile tech emerging in Africa, how successful they have been, to overcome infrastructure and political delays. They're fully up to speed with the rest of the world. So, yeah, there are plenty of examples to learn from every nation.
And I would add into that as well. Yeah. I've just seen one of the comments come through regarding what we provide as an organisation, and yeah, we provide online booking and reservation solutions to local governments globally. But when we go into these processes, we partner with digital transformation organisations that consult or bring in teams to assist cultural change and digital transformation change within cities. So we really are embedded in that environment. And yes, we provide specific solutions, and often we're brought in for a specific solution. When we go into those scoping sessions, when we go into those wider roundtable conversations with different departments, we then are able to bring in this breadth of other organizations, trusted partners that are the best in their fields to support their wider transformation goals and needs. So yeah, that's how we are heavily influenced by it, and how we're supporting organizations around the world with it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. That should answer your question, Sarah. That is pretty much all the questions that have come through, but I'll just flick back to the other slide. The contact details are there if you want to get in touch. And there's also some commenting capabilities on the talk page of Insight Live Week. So do add in any questions or comments you have there for Vinny and Sam, and they'll be able to get back to you. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And thank you so much, Vinny and Sam, for such an informative session.
No worries. Thanks. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.